Parfait's prologue, Fire in the Classroom. I quote, "Like all real teachers, I fail constantly. I don't get enough sleep. I lie awake in the early morning hours agonizing over a kid I was unable to reach. Being a teacher can be painful." He begins his prologue with this quote just to show his readers what kind of teacher he truly is. He's the kind of teacher that will go above and beyond for his students. Your average teacher will teach the material and be done with it. He wants his students to take away life lessons that they will carry on and perhaps teach their children. He ends his prologue with a short story on a science experiment. He was teaching a young student who's having a difficult time getting a burner to light. And with his help, he gets the lamp burning. However, through this, his hair begins to catch fire. And I quote again, "I had done everything I could to help someone. I didn't do it particularly well, but the effort was there. I thought to myself that if I could care so much about teaching that I didn't even realize my hair was burning, I was moving in the right direction. From that moment, I resolved to always teach like my hair was on fire." And from that point on, he did. Part 1, There's No Place Like Home. This part shows how Room 56 creates a safe haven and provides children with shelter from the storm. While I was reading this book, I made a few notes and commented on a couple of quotes that he put in his book. One of them being, "The teacher is afraid of looking bad, of not being liked, of not being listened to, of losing control. The students are even more afraid of being scolded and humiliated, of looking foolish in front of peers and getting bad grades, of facing their parents' wrath. It's just that." Teachers begin every school year afraid of what their students are, and the students are even more afraid of what their teacher is. Each teacher has a different style of teaching and a different method for their learning. And if you can get past that and install that into your children's head, that it's more about trust. It's not the fear. And another quote I selected was to replace fear with trust. "On the first day of school, within the first 2 minutes, I discussed this issue with children. While most classrooms are based on fear, our classroom is based on trust." He says this because he wants his students to be able to come to him if they have a problem. They don't want them to fear that he will punish them. It's more of an adult learning process. If you mess up, just admit that you mess up, and we can move on. He stresses this point to his children from the very beginning. And even if something does happen and they do require discipline, he stresses that the discipline must be logical. The punishment really must fit the crime. Not only that, he also proceeds to tell how you are a role model, and the children will watch their teacher constantly. They learn things from their teacher that they maybe cannot learn from their parents, or their parents have not taught them yet. And what he's trying to show in Room 56 is that the lessons that they're going to get from him and from this room, they can carry on throughout their life. It's the simple things like manners and being an adult, saying that I messed up, and they can move on from it. In part 1, he also begins to explain the search for level 6. Now, unlike most of us, I had no idea what level 6 was. I didn't even know what the first 5 were. But he begins to explain that as well. Level 1, I don't want to get in trouble. This is very common in just about all children. That's their biggest fear, is that they're going to be in trouble for something that they did or did not do. And I quote, "Now, on the first day of class, I began a partnership with the children. After I request their trust and pledge my own, I ask the children to leave level 1 thinking behind them." Level 1 thinking, I don't want to get in trouble. Let's forget about that and move on. We move on to level 2. I want a reward. When I first read this, it reminded me of dogs, toddlers. They do something right, they want a cookie, you know. But Raphael wants to explain that that's not how it is. They should do things because it's right, not because they're going to get a treat for doing them. Level 3, I want to please somebody. This I've seen more commonly in older children, maybe 9, 10 years old. They do it because they want someone to be proud of them. I don't know, I guess it's like an attention thing. But he begins to explain that you do not need to please someone else. You need to please yourself. And that's his biggest issue, that children they'll go throughout their entire life. They will get A's to please their parents. They'll go to a college of their parents' choice to please their parents. And before you know it, they're at a job that they don't like because they were pleasing someone else. Maybe they're not out to be successful businessmen. Maybe they want to save the environment. So they lead, I don't know, an organization to help recycle. They're pleasing themselves, not their parents. And above all, that's going to make them happy, not that their parents are happy. They will be miserable trying to make someone else happy. Now, leaving that behind, we go to level 4. I follow the rules. And I'm quoting, "After all, it is essential that kids know the rules. The better teachers take the time to explain why of certain rules, and many creative teachers get their students involved in the creation of class standards. The theory is that kids who are involved in generating classroom rules will be more interested in following them." And he proves this to be true once again. He had an example of a teacher who had an interesting way of making his students say thank you. One of his rules was that the teacher gave you something, you had 3 seconds to acknowledge the kindness and say thank you, or he would take it back. Now, he went on to say that this worked, but once they left the classroom and were around other people, it no longer worked. He wants to teach students that while the rules are necessary, many of our greatest heroes became heroes by not following the rules. And I say this because several examples that he gave, such as Martin Luther King or Gandhi, they didn't follow the rules. They went above and beyond and perhaps around the rules to get to where they were. And just by saying thank you, you're doing what someone else wants you to do, not because you feel that it's right. But once again, I quote that level 4 is a good place to be, but we must try to do even better. Level 5, I am considerate of other people. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. And this is true. Because unless you look at it from their eyes, walk in their shoes, you're not going to understand how people really see the world. And moving beyond that and going to level 6. I have a personal code of behavior and I follow it. This is very difficult, as he explains, to achieve. Many students will maybe make it to level 4, maybe level 5, but once you reach level 6, you're really there. And he uses the examples through not just videos and movies, but through actual films. Films that you can learn something from. He may use that as an example because, as he states, it is very difficult to teach level 6 learning.
Chapter 12, Thinking for Yourself. In this podcast, to summarize chapter 12, basically it is to follow your own instinct of solving problems. You need to understand the problem. You need to choose appropriate evaluation of the problem. You need to find many different solutions to the problems. By thinking for yourself, it will help yourself from lightning within. Chapter 13, Cyber Heroes. In this chapter, he is describing about new ideas for students and authors by using a VCR as a project for a weekend movie review. For the students to basically write a comment about the movies that they're watching on the weekend, to understand the movies, to basically analyze what they watched over the weekend. In this day and time, it would be more of an iPod or DVD player as students and start watching different old movies to analyze it. This is from chapter 13.
Epilogue, rest in peace. I quote, "It's a thankless job. It's hard to find a reason to believe. It's thankless and it doesn't get easier. When you glance at your mental ledger, the red ink completely dominates the black." What he means when he says this is that you will look back and think of so many things that you did wrong. You won't even begin to think about the children that you actually did inspire. And he fills up his epilogue with an essay from a student that she wrote at Notre Dame when she was 13 years old. And as he finishes his epilogue, he explains how a student really is the best teacher. And I quote, "As usual, it is a student who proves to be my best teacher. There is a reason to believe. Let us all work hard to build these safe havens. Janet's essay eases my sleep. Tomorrow, as always, I too will retreat to room 56. There's no place like home." Rafe sums up just what a safe haven he has created in room 56. And if not for students like Janet, who will maybe remember him on Christmas, or write an essay about him, or come back and visit years later, many teachers will forget that the lessons that they have taught these children will be permanently embedded in their brain in black ink. But the students that they could not reach are always in the red, and it will cover up all of the black and the goodness. It takes a special student like Janet just to remember and remind their teacher just what an impact they made.